Remember Keith Sweat? The guy whose voice got you through every breakup and slow dance in the 90s? While you assumed he faded away, he's been living in a hidden Georgia mansion with a 2-story living room, outdoor fireplace, electric car chargers, and a backyard that looks like a private resort. 35 years later, he's still stacking checks, and nobody's been paying attention to how he's actually living. Let's pull back the curtain on how he did it. The R&B king living in plain sight. Here's something wild. Keith Sweat could walk through an airport right now, and half the people under 30 wouldn't recognize him. But ask anyone who grew up in the late 80s or 90s about Make It Last Forever or Nobody, and watch their whole face light up. That's the strange space Keith occupies, legendary to a generation, invisible to the algorithm. And maybe that's exactly how he wants it. While you've been watching Drake post mansion tours or keeping tabs on Jay-Z's real estate moves, Keith's been living in a stunning property just north of Atlanta, hosting a nationally syndicated radio show that's been running since 2008, touring sold-out venues with cats like Joe and Genuine, and collecting royalty checks from albums that went platinum back when people actually bought CDs. Think about that for a second. Keith Sweat has been making money from the same songs for over 3 decades. I Want Her still gets radio play. Twisted still shows up in playlists. Every spin, every stream, every late-night dedication on Quiet Storm Radio. That's money hitting his account while he's asleep in Georgia. His mansion sits in Alpharetta, about half an hour north of downtown Atlanta, tucked into one of those communities where the wealth doesn't announce itself. No gates with giant initials. No fountains shaped like microphones. Just refined, intentional, grown folks luxury. The kind of spot where you choose peace over noise and long-term stability over short-term flex. And that choice tells you everything about who Keith actually is when the stage lights go dark and the tour bus pulls away. He's not chasing headlines. He's not begging for relevance. He built something that lasts, and now he's living in it, literally and figuratively. But to really understand how Keith ended up here, sipping whatever he sips on a Georgia patio while his career contemporaries fade into county fair circuits, you've got to rewind to where this whole thing started. Because the smooth voice that defined slow jams came from a place where absolutely nothing was handed over easy. From night shifts to #1, Rise of Keith Sweat. Keith Douglas. Sweat was born July 22, 1961 in New York City, and his early life reads like the setup to every great underdog story. His mom worked as a hairdresser. His dad worked in a factory. When his father passed in 1973, everything got harder real fast. His mom was suddenly raising 5 kids alone, and young Keith learned the kind of lesson that either breaks you or builds you. Talent means nothing if you don't back it up with work. So he worked. While going to City College, Keith took the night shift at Macy's stocking shelves, moving inventory, doing the kind of grind most people quit after 2 weeks. During the week, school and retail. On weekends, he sang with a local band called Jamila, gigging across New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, anywhere that would book them. And here's the part that separates Keith from a lot of artists who blow up and then blow through their money. Before music ever paid him a dime, he was learning how money actually works. He worked in the mailroom at Payne Weber, a brokerage firm. Within 4 years, he'd climbed to assistant broker at the New York Stock Exchange. He even supervised at the New York Commodity Exchange. Numbers made sense to him. Markets made sense to him. Strategy made sense to him. That business foundation? That's why Keith's still here when so many artists from his era are doing nostalgia tours at state fairs for $5,000 a night. He understood money before fame, which meant when fame showed up, he didn't treat it like it would last forever. But music kept pulling at him harder than any stock ticker ever could. In 1984, Keith made the kind of bet that either launches you or destroys you. He left the band, went solo, started recording independently hoping someone would notice. And someone did. Vintertainment Records signed him, and in 1987, he dropped Make It Last Forever. The album went triple platinum. I Want Her hit #1 on the R&B charts and stayed there like it owned the spot. Just like that, Keith Sweat became the voice you heard at every wedding, every slow dance, every late-night phone call where somebody was trying way too hard to sound romantic. And he didn't treat it like a fluke. I'll Give All My Love to You in 1990, double platinum. Keep It Comin' in 1991, Get Up on It in 1994, both platinum. Every project climbing charts, every single becoming a moment. During this run, Keith also discovered and mentored groups like Silk and Cut Close, proving he wasn't just riding his own wave, he was building one for others to surf. Then, 1996 hit, and Keith dropped his self-titled album that went quadruple platinum and cracked the top 5 on the Billboard 200. 4 times platinum means 4 million copies sold. In an era before streaming inflated numbers, that's monster status. That's generational wealth if you manage it right. The late 90s and early 2000s kept him moving. Some albums platinum, some gold, but all of them keeping Keith Sweat relevant in an industry that devours people whole and spits out nostalgia acts. In 2008, Just Me brought him back to the top of the R&B charts. Albums like Ridin' Solo and Till the Morning kept him in rotation. He even formed a supergroup called LSG with Gerald Levert and Johnny Gill, 3 powerhouse vocalists combining fan bases and multiplying revenue streams. Smart business wrapped in smooth harmonies. Fast forward to right now, 2026, and Keith's actively touring with Joe, Drew Hill, and Genuine on the R&B Lovers Tour, selling out venues from Vegas to Charlotte. He dropped new music in 2024 and 2025 that actually charted, not throwaway nostalgia tracks, but songs that radio programmers still wanted to play. And the whole time, since 2008, he's been hosting The Sweat Hotel, a nationally syndicated Quiet Storm radio show where he connects with fans, curates playlists, and keeps his voice in people's lives even when he's not on tour. That's not luck. That's strategy. That's understanding that relevance requires evolution, and evolution requires showing up consistently, even when the world's not watching as closely as it used to. But all that touring, all those album sales, all those years of grinding, they fund something most people never see. And that something is tucked into the Georgia trees, waiting quietly behind a long driveway where the outside world can't quite reach. The Alpharetta Mansion, where smooth meets substance. Let me paint you a picture because visualizing matters when you're talking about a place someone actually lives, not a spot they bought to flex on social media. Keith's mansion sits in Alpharetta, Georgia, and if you don't know Alpharetta, it's one of those North Atlanta suburbs where the money's real but nobody's screaming about it. It's half a mile from downtown Milton, close enough that you can walk to coffee shops and boutiques if you feel like it, but far enough that paparazzi aren't camping your block hoping for a messy grocery store photo. Pull up to the property, and the first thing you notice is how the house doesn't fight the landscape. It works with it. The driveway curves gently through mature trees, and by the time you reach the front door, you've already left the noise behind. That's intentional. When you've spent 35 years performing for crowds, silence becomes luxury. Step inside, and the vibe shifts immediately. The kitchen hits you first. Clean lines, a massive center island that could seat 6 people comfortably, stainless appliances that actually look used instead of staged, and an open flow that spills right into this dramatic 2-story living room. High ceilings, natural light flooding through oversized windows, the kind of space where you could throw an intimate gathering of 30 people and it wouldn't feel cramped. You can picture it, right? Music playing low in the background, maybe some Anita Baker or Freddie Jackson. People laughing, drinks flowing, Keith holding court without ever raising his voice because that's not his style. Upstairs, the master bedroom is where the word retreat actually means something. It's not just big, it's thought out. There's a seating area separated from the bed, so you've got space to read, watch TV, or just sit with your thoughts without feeling like you're in a hotel. The bathroom? Spa vibes all the way. Dual vanities, soaking tub positioned near a window so you can look out at the trees, walk-in shower with fixtures that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everything finished in materials that whisper expensive without screaming it. But honestly, the backyard is where Keith's taste really shows up. This isn't some lawn service special where they mow, edge, and leave. This is curated. A tiled patio flows into an outdoor fireplace setup on one side and a separate fire pit area on the other. Picture late summer evenings out here, fire crackling, stars overhead, maybe Keith strumming an acoustic guitar just because he can. No stage, no cameras, just vibes. And here's a detail that tells you Keith's thinking long-term. The property has 2 ChargePoint electric vehicle charging stations built into the garage. Not because it's trendy, but because it's practical. Man's preparing for the future while most people are still figuring out the present. There's also a whole house natural gas generator, which means when storms knock out power across the neighborhood, Keith's lights stay on. Comfort and reliability baked into the infrastructure. Professional outdoor lighting wraps the property, making it look stunning at night while keeping security tight. Full irrigation system maintaining the landscaping year-round. New roof protecting the investment. Everything designed not to impress strangers scrolling Instagram, but to make daily life smoother, easier, better. This is grown folks' luxury, the kind of home you build when you're done proving points and ready to actually enjoy the life you worked for. But how did Keith end up in Georgia in the first place? And when did Atlanta become the move for R&B royalty, looking to disappear into comfort? Why Atlanta? The migration that changed everything. Let's talk about something bigger than just Keith for a second, because his move to Georgia fits into a pattern that's been reshaping Black wealth for the past 20 years. Atlanta became the Black Hollywood without ever asking for permission. It's where Tyler Perry built his empire and bought a literal studio lot. It's where Outkast Jermaine Dupri, Usher, and T.I. planted roots and never left. It's where actors, athletes, musicians, and entrepreneurs quietly started accumulating property, building businesses, and creating a cultural ecosystem that rivals LA and New York, without the ego or the overhead. And the reasons aren't mysterious, they're mathematical. Georgia has no state income tax on retirement and investment income, which means Keith's royalty checks and touring revenue stretch further here than they would in California or New York. Property taxes are lower. Cost of living is significantly cheaper. You can buy serious acreage, build custom estates, and still have cash left over to invest elsewhere. For someone like Keith, who's been earning royalties since 1987 and has built multiple revenue streams, Atlanta offered everything: proximity to a major airport for touring, access to recording studios and industry connections, a thriving Black community with spending power, and the kind of privacy that lets you live without being a spectacle. Now, Keith doesn't broadcast when he bought the Alpharetta property or what he paid, because Keith moves quietly. But we know he's owned real estate in the Milton-Alpharetta area for years. There was an older property transferred to a trust back in 1999, which later faced some financial complications during the 2008 housing crisis, something a lot of people went through when the economy imploded. But like any smart investor, Keith adjusted. What stands today is stability. The current mansion reflects his evolved priorities: modern comfort, privacy, space to breathe, and an asset that's appreciated alongside Atlanta's luxury real estate boom over the past decade. Homes in Alpharetta's upscale neighborhoods have climbed steadily in value, meaning whatever Keith paid back then is worth significantly more now. That's smart wealth management. Buy in an appreciating market, hold long-term, enjoy the lifestyle, and let the asset work for you. And the mansion? It's just one piece of a financial puzzle most people don't realize Keith's been putting together for over 30 years. The empire. How R&B money actually works. Alright, let's get into the money because this is where Keith's story gets really interesting. At his absolute peak in the late 80s and 90s, Keith was moving units that would make today's streaming artists weep. Make It Last Forever sold over 3 million copies. 3 million physical CDs and cassettes that people paid $12 to $15 each to own. His 1996 self-titled album? Quadruple platinum. 4 million copies. Do the math on what that generates in royalties, and you start seeing how wealth compounds. Between 1987 and 2000, Keith released 6 albums certified platinum or higher. Every single one generated royalties not just from sales, but from radio play, licensing deals when his songs showed up in movies or TV shows, and performance royalties every time somebody sang his music in a club or at a wedding. And here's the beautiful part about royalties. They don't stop. Every time nobody plays on the radio, Keith gets a check. Every time someone streams Twisted on Spotify, he gets a fraction of a cent. And when you've got hundreds of millions of streams, those fractions stack into real money. Touring became another engine. At his peak, Keith was commanding anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 per show. and he was doing dozens of shows a year. Even now in 2026, he's out there with the R&B Lovers Tour hitting mid-sized venues and casinos where tickets run $75 to $200 plus for VIP packages. Multiply that by hundreds of seats per night, subtract production costs, and you're still looking at serious per-show income. Then there's The Sweat Hotel, his nationally syndicated radio show that's been running since 2008. Broadcasting deals and sponsorships from that likely pull six figures annually, consistent revenue that doesn't require him to be on stage or in a studio. Keith's YouTube channel has over 1 million subscribers and nearly 1 billion total views. That's generating somewhere around $12,000 per month in ad revenue alone. Not life-changing money by itself, but it's passive income compounding year after year. He's also written and produced for other artists over the years, creating additional royalty streams. When you're behind the scenes making hits for someone else, you're building wealth that doesn't require your face on the cover. Now here's where we need to be real about the numbers, because Keith's current net worth is estimated somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000, depending on which source you trust. And if you're sitting there thinking, wait, that seems shockingly low for someone who sold millions of albums, you're absolutely right to be confused. Let me explain what happened, because it's a story that repeats across the industry. The music business changed fundamentally. The shift from physical sales to streaming obliterated traditional royalty structures. What used to generate tens of thousands per quarter now generates hundreds or low thousands. That's not a Keith Sweat problem. That's an industry-wide collapse that hit everyone who built their fortune before Spotify existed. On top of market changes, Keith faced some personal financial storms. In 2012, he got hit with a lawsuit over a $450,000 mortgage on a Detroit property that ended in foreclosure, leaving over $200,000 in debt. Court judgments led to wage garnishments and property liens. He's also reportedly dealt with over $35,000 in back taxes dating to 2014. These aren't uncommon struggles for artists who made serious money in the 90s, but didn't have financial advisors managing long-term wealth preservation. The industry was different back then. Managers took massive cuts, contracts were artist-hostile, and financial literacy wasn't part of the conversation until it was too late. But here's what matters, and I really want you to hear this. Despite those setbacks, Keith is still standing, still touring, still earning, still living in a beautiful Georgia mansion with electric car chargers and a backyard fire pit. That's not failure, that's resilience. That's figuring out how to survive an industry designed to chew people up and spit them out, broke and forgotten. And while Keith was navigating financial ups and downs, he was also quietly doing something most people never hear about, giving back in ways that don't make headlines, but absolutely change lives. The quiet giving, impact without the Instagram post. You know what's interesting about Keith's philanthropy? He doesn't hold press conferences about it. He doesn't post donation receipts on social media. He just quietly supports causes that matter, and you only find out about it if you're actually paying attention. One of the organizations Keith supported is the American Heart Association, which might seem random until you remember that heart disease is the leading cause of death in Black communities across America. By lending his platform to awareness campaigns and fundraising efforts, Keith's helping push conversations about prevention and early detection, conversations that literally save lives. He's also worked with Child Help, an organization that's been providing treatment, counseling, and crisis hotlines for child abuse victims since 1959. Supporting something like that signals a personal conviction that healing starts early and protection matters. When public figures stand behind child welfare, it amplifies awareness in ways statistics and government reports never could. Keith's charitable reach extends globally through partnerships with UNICEF, aligning with efforts that provide clean water, vaccinations, education, and emergency relief to children in over 190 countries. That's the kind of big-picture thinking that shows maturity. Understanding that if your music crosses borders, your compassion should too. Education's another pillar. His support for the United Negro College Fund helps bridge financial gaps for students attending HBCUs, creating pathways to futures that might otherwise stay out of reach. For families where a scholarship means the difference between college and working full-time at 18, that support is everything. Keith's giving doesn't make TMZ, It doesn't trend on Twitter, but it reveals depth. A man who understands that legacy isn't just platinum plaques on a wall. It's the lives you lift when nobody's watching and you get zero credit for it. And beyond the charity, beyond the empire, beyond the mansion, there's still the actual person. The father, the man who's lived decades in the spotlight and somehow kept most of his private life actually private. The man behind the smooth voice. Keith guards his personal life the way most people guard their bank passwords, and honestly, good for him. In interviews, he'll talk music all day. Ask him about touring or the radio show and he'll give you thoughtful answers. But shift the conversation to his personal life, and you can feel the wall go up, polite but firm. He was married to Lisa Wu from 1992 to 2002, a marriage that lasted a decade before ending the way a lot of high-profile relationships do. Publicly, messily, with custody battles that played out in court filings and tabloid speculation. Reports suggest Keith either won or shares custody, and he's been clear that co-parenting, even when it's complicated, stays a priority. Beyond that marriage, Keith's a father to multiple children, including daughters from previous relationships and a son named Joshua. He doesn't post them constantly, doesn't turn fatherhood into content, but when he does mention his kids, you can hear how his whole tone shifts. The superstar thing evaporates, and what's left is just a dad who cares deeply about being present. As of early 2026, Keith's single, and he's been pretty blunt about why. During a January appearance on The Breakfast Club, he said he avoids dating in the celebrity space because privacy brings peace. After spending 35 years with strangers knowing your business, that choice makes perfect sense. Of course, longevity in this industry comes with moments that get twisted online. In mid-2025, Keith made some comments during live shows about relationships and traditional gender roles that went viral for all the wrong reasons. Some people called it outdated. Others said he was just speaking his truth. Keith eventually clarified that he values partnership and mutual effort. But the internet doesn't really do nuance, so the debate dragged on longer than it needed to. There was also that Versus battle with Bobby Brown that had people talking less about the music and more about, well, everything else happening on stage. Social media did what social media does: memes, speculation, hot takes flying at light speed. And a brief back and forth with 50 Cent over scheduling conflicts turned into one of those internet moments that trends for 48 hours and then disappears like it never happened. But through all of it, the scrutiny, the criticism, the moments that get clipped and spread without context, Keith keeps doing what he's always done. He shows up, he tours, he hosts the radio show, he spends time with his kids. He lives in that Georgia mansion where the backyard fire pit crackles on cool evenings, and nobody's asking him to explain himself. At this stage of life, Keith's daily routine is probably more structured than most people realize. Mornings might start with reviewing content for the Sweat Hotel, curating playlists, prepping for interviews. Light workouts to stay healthy without obsessing over it. Time on the patio with coffee, just breathing without an agenda. When he's not on tour, he's home in Alpharetta, cooking, reading, maybe working on new music in a home studio setup, enjoying the peace he spent decades building toward. When tour dates do come up, he travels selectively, hits the stage, delivers exactly what fans came for, and then heads back to Georgia where life moves at a pace he controls. And maybe that's the whole point. Keith Sweat made slow jams the soundtrack for a generation's most intimate moments, built a 35-year career that's still going, survived financial setbacks that would have destroyed most artists, and came out the other side living in a hidden mansion where peace matters more than applause. That's not a cautionary tale. That's a blueprint for longevity. That's what it looks like when someone figures out how to sustain relevance without sacrificing sanity, how to build wealth without losing yourself, and how to live well without needing the world's permission. The Georgia mansion, the radio empire, the touring legacy, the quiet generosity, they're all threads in a larger story about transformation and survival. Keith turned night shifts at Macy's into #1 singles, stock exchange knowledge into smart financial moves, and fleeting fame into something that actually lasts. And honestly, for a guy whose whole brand was making you feel something deep on a slow song, the fact that his greatest achievement might be finding peace in a place most people will never see feels exactly right. And with that note, we conclude this journey through Keith Sweat's massive R&B empire, his career journey, and his ultra-luxurious Georgia mansion. Which part of his story fascinated you the most? Let me know in the comments. And for more such interesting peeks into Black wealth, subscribe to Black Status.